Good morning, recruiting junkies. How you doing? I hope you're well. If you're in the UK, it's another fantastic day. I'm looking out of my window in blue skies, and can you hear it? Silence. The only thing we can hear is a little bit of Joe Wicks in the background. The builders have gone. The house isn't finished, but you cannot get plaster for love nor money. So if anyone's got any plaster, I need about 10 bags of skimming plaster, then that would be fantastic. And then I can move my house towards a state of completion. So, but it's another day at the coalface. I think for many that have children, it is another day of learning, another day of balancing, teaching your children, managing their behavior, and also trying to do your job at the same time. So my wife, Lisa, she's back at work today. She's live streaming her lessons. And yeah, it's just hectic, but life is good. Yeah, no, all is good. So when I was thinking about what we're going to focus on this week, Wednesday is the highlight of the week because we've got Greg Savage coming on the show. And he's going to be talking about his thoughts about the lockdown and things that you can focus on in order to succeed in the weeks and months ahead. What we've also got is we're going to have other guests. So we're going to have Angela, we're going to have Claire and other coaches from the recruiting gym. So yeah, it's a great week to be alive. Now, some of you may remember last week on Thursday, I was answering the question, what do I do? I'm furloughed, but I still want to recruit. Well, you can't recruit, but what you can do is focus on your personal brand. One of the really important aspects of being a recruiter in today's market and the situation we're in today is that it's a time to be more visible, not less visible. Building your personal brand is something that we often leave to the back burner. The only personal brand we've got is I'm recruiting for this. I'm recruiting for this. Do you have any candidates? Do you have any candidates? Are you looking? Are you looking? When we're in a situation where no one's recruiting, when we're in a situation where no one's recruiting or very few people are recruiting, we've got a bit more time. We've got a bit more time to think about what we can do to grow our online presence. And what that means is just thinking more about what your audience is interested in on a day-to-day basis. The challenge I gave you last Thursday was to firstly identify the key client groups that you're looking to build relationships with. So this might be the companies where they're working. It could be the industries where they're in. And then the next step was trying to work out what are their interests at the moment? What are the challenges that they're having? So almost a guaranteed need for leaders at the moment is managing remotely, engaging your team through lockdown. There'll be other industry trends where there's issues. So there'll be big issues in retail. There'll be big issues in the restaurant trade. There'll be big issues in financial services, in professional services, more than you can think about. So we've got the industry issues. That's where their company exists, and then you've got technical industry issues. So what are the peculiar issues for accounting firms? What are in the accounting industry? What are the peculiar issues in the marketing industry? What are the peculiar issues within the IT industry? But what you've got to be doing is spending some time documenting what those needs are and documenting those across your organization and the niches that you work in. One of the best things about working in an organization that's a specialist and you're surrounded by 5 or 6 people that are doing the same thing is that you can all contribute to this. You can all contribute to this. The third aspect of the challenge that I gave you on Thursday was to start finding out where that information exists. Who are some of the influences in that market? Who are some of the professional associations that you want to start sharing content from. It's really important that we know where that information is. One of the key parts of building your online presence is not about you creating content, but it's about your ability to curate that content and package that content for your audience. All of you, or many of you, will be aware of Hungly and Recruiting Brain Food. That's probably the best example that I know of someone building their online presence through curating content. All Hung does is reach out to different places, brings that information into a newsletter that goes out every Sunday. That has built him not only a fantastic online presence, but has built him an industry. It's built him a business that he can get sponsorship on, and he can generate revenue from. And that's just from collecting information. So curating of content is really, really important. And so what I would suggest is to start thinking about where are we going to find that content from. And then what we're going to talk about over the next 5 minutes is how do we actually share that content. Now, remember, I'm more than happy for you guys to share some successes in the chat feature here. Also, we've got the Recruiting Gym. So that's members.recruitinggym.com, and you can find all our playbacks. So for those that are watching here, if you go to members.recruitinggym.com, that's where we post all the playbacks of the shows. And yeah, just make sure we do that. I'll put that in the chat at the end. So let's think about how we share content. Well, the easiest analogy that I will give to you is that if you imagine there's two parts to a piece of content that you share that you've curated. The first part is the bit of content, and then the next part is the commentary that you put on top of it. If you imagine you've got the fruitcake, that's the commentary. So sorry, that's the content, and then your comment is the icing. Does that make sense? So what you've got to be thinking about is how are you going to be adding value to the content that you share? 5 or 6 years ago, you could just press retweet, share. But in today's world, people expect a little bit more. What they expect is for you to A, have read the content, but B, to be able to provide some insight. So let's say, for example, you share a top 5 guide. What you'd need to do is to read that top 5 and to be able to say, here's a great top 5 guide to managing remotely. My personal favorite is number 3 because. So it could be, so that's what we're trying to do. So I'm just looking at the chat feature there. So people chatting on the side. So, but you've got to think about the commentary. So let's say, for example, we're in lockdown for 3 more weeks, and like yesterday, there was the education secretary was talking about schools going back. Now, let's say, for example, you find an article on schools going back. You might share that article on schools going back, saying, "I'm sure all parents that are homeschooling and working will be relieved at this." What are your thoughts? Too soon? Question mark. What you're doing is using the content to initiate the conversation, and then you're providing an extra question on top. So let's think about another example. Let's say, for example, I was reading an article this morning on the restaurant trade and the impact that it's going to have on the restaurant trade with all the restaurants being shut and the cost of cash flow, and will behaviors change? Now, let's say, for example, I work in the hospitality industry. What I might do is I might share that article, and then I might say, my hearts go out to all the restaurants that may not reopen as a result of the lockdown. Or does anyone have any advice for restaurants that are struggling at the moment that want to survive the lockdown? What you're doing is you're trying to stimulate a conversation. Now, all this is predicated upon you having an audience that is relevant for your market. Sometimes I feel recruiters spend more time linking in with other recruiters than they actually do clients and candidates from their own markets. Well, if you look at their broadcast feed, you'd definitely feel that. So what you've got to be thinking about is what is going on in that industry. What is going on from a leadership perspective. Now, if I think back to my early days as running my own business and thinking about how I was going to share these things, I got really nervous that what would happen if no one commented. But what happens if people think I'm bad? Well, there's a few things to think about. First thing is you can reassure yourself that anything you post, whilst it exists forever in the internet, on that person's on your contacts feeds, it disappears quite quickly. So if you post something and it sinks without a trace, that's fine. Also, bear in mind is that there's a sort of a hierarchy of how much engagement a content gets. So let's say, for example, shares is the highest level of engagement. So when someone sees a post and then they share it, that's a very high level of engagement on LinkedIn. When someone comments, that's the next level of engagement. When someone likes it, that's the next level of engagement below that. But there's a massive level of engagement where someone has seen your post and read your post, but didn't engage at one of those higher levels. But often we measure ourselves on the likes and the comments and the shares, but forget about the fact that we are visible in people's feeds. Now, why are likes important? Well, when one of your network likes a post, it tells LinkedIn, please show me more content from this person. So likes are important, but it doesn't mean to say if something doesn't get any likes, that it's not very good, if that makes sense. So let's think about the value that we can add through the content that we share. It could be that you might share some sites where some really good courses on LinkedIn. So for instance, LinkedIn shared some free courses in LinkedIn Learning right at the start of the outbreak. It could be there's some free courses on Udemy. There's some free courses on like some MOOCs, so some like there's loads of other sort of free educational sites out there. But what you might want to do is find a free course and then share that's relevant for your industry. All you've got to do is type in free course on and type in your particular niche or a particular skill set in your niche and see what see what comes up. Then you can share that and say, for anyone that's furloughed, here might be a good course for free. Let's say, for example, I mean, if I let me share my screen. Let me share my screen for a second. Share our application window. Share. So if we just share here quickly and we type in, let's say, for example, free leadership courses, furlough. There we are. Right, training whilst furlough, build.uk. So let's say, for example, this is obviously in the construction industry. So if there's anyone that's a construction worker, what you've got here is access to e-learning from there. So it's not that big of a deal. What we've got to be doing, is really thinking about sharing content that we think will engage our audience. Remember, the tip that I'm doing today is for those that are furloughed and those that are still in work. But it's about thinking about your audience. That is what we should be obsessing about every day. Your goal and challenge for today is to share one piece of content with your network. That could be you share it on LinkedIn. It could be that you share it over an email update. Why don't you make it educational? No one's going to give you a hard time for sharing something educational or a course. Look up LinkedIn Learning free courses and take those links and then reshare them. Tag LinkedIn in, they'll give you more LinkedIn love, almost certainly. But think about your audience, think about the challenges they're having today, and then think about how you can help them going forward as well. I will see everybody soon. Join me in the recruitinggym.com, where I'll be posting content. We're doing webinars for our members on a day-to-day basis. And if you are a leader and you want help over the next 12 months, Angela Cripps and I are doing our leadership and management program that's going to start in the next sort of week to 10 days. We've got a monthly offer to help those that are don't want to pay it all up front. But if you think you're going to need help in building a successful business and running a successful team over the next 12 months, Angela and I are here to help you. So we'll see you soon. Take care now. Bye.